anybody just arrives in our townships and rural areas and set up businesses without licenses and permits. We are going to bring this to an end. And those who are operating illegally, wherever they come from, must now know.
We've got economy whereby people can have businesses. I've spoken at length about that one. I want to focus on the employment part. Our labor laws are very clear that non-South African citizens can only work in our country if they've got scarce and critical skills. We need to take a posture that when South Africa needs a particular skill, it is the one, and we don't have in our country, it is the one that will actively go out to the countries to say, we want this particular skill. And when we have this person, they must come to our country, and a clear plan of skills transfer must be developed so that this skill can be transferred to the local, so that in the near future, locals can be participated and these skills can be amongst the South African citizens. If you look at the reality, we're not talking about ideas, or we're not talking about things that are in the sky. We're talking about realities that many companies, including the government, have broken the labor laws of our country. Hence, you find that you're going to have cleaners that are not South African, security guards that are not South African, and you're going to have waiters that are not South African. I can ask a person here in Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, or Pretoria, when last did you go to a restaurant and be served by a South African? And if it's not a South African that is serving you, who should be serving you? Hence, we are saying our labor laws must prioritize South Africans. Our labor laws, the implementation thereof, it must be patriotic in nature. It cannot be that the majority of Uber drivers, it is people that are not South African. Whereas we've got so many young people in our country who have driver's licenses. And you find that our young people end up living a life of crime, living a life of drugs because they are excluded economically. So that is why we are saying the time has come for our labor laws to be fully complied with. With a quote that says, starving your children and feeding your neighbor, that is not Ubuntu. Ubuntu, it is when you start feeding your own South African citizens who you know that they can never get food in any other country besides South Africa. Once South Africa has fed its own citizens, it's only then that you can start thinking about feeding other people. We've got, during this time of COVID, close to, in fact, more than 10 million people applying for the unemployment grant. And that is in addition to the 18 million South African citizens who are actually grant recipients. In other words, we're talking about 28 million people who are dependent on the state. There's no future when people are dependent on the state so much. That is why we are saying the time where South Africans are made to be beggars in their own country must come to an end. All forms of the economy must be in the hands of South Africans, starting with the microeconomy because of its immediate nature. We are saying put South Africans first. Thank you.
You are witnessing the destruction of your future. Yabantwana bakho. Kulibela uhlala endlini. Awunayo ne-passport. Because aba bane-passport, when South Africa collapses, they take their passport, they run to another country. Wena uzobaleka uyephi? So South Africans, wake up. This is your only country. Fight for your country. Fight to restore the dignity of Abantu Benu. Make sure ukuba South Africa has to be transformed. Amanda!
You touched on the issue of foreigners and illegal foreigners at it dominating the township economy and saying the government should do something about that. But also you have a new phenomenon of big retailers who seem to be taking over even spaza shops at a township level. What do you think should be the solution? Is it kicking out illegal foreigners who are selling expired foods and making space for big corporations to take over?
Yeah. Look, let's talk about the phenomenon of illegal immigration. Any government, whenever that you've got to deal with unemployment, education, provision of healthcare services, you need to have that understanding that these are the amount of people that we have, because the basis for you to plan how many police stations, how many clinics, how many schools need to be there, it is based on exactly that, the citizens. Now, once you've got illegal immigration that is happening in millions in South Africa, then it makes governance to be nearly impossible, because government is unable to plan, including on the issues of water and sanitation, basic service delivery. Now, on the question now of the township economy, you've got an anomaly in South Africa whereby you've got a sector which is the township and the village and sometimes the inner city economy, whereby almost 100% of all economic activities are not done by the native South Africans, which is an anomaly because it does not happen anywhere in the world. Go to any country, it does not happen. So our proposal as the ATM is that, number one, government needs to be very vigorous on the question of migration, because the people that must come to the country, they must come through legal means, because even South Africans, when they go to other countries, they go to those countries legally. And South Africa needs to deal decisively with illegal immigration, because that is how you are going to send a message that illegal immigration or committing of any crimes is going to be dealt with. Now, the solution there lies that now the government needs to restore the township economy to citizens, because it is citizens that need to dominate all the sectors of the economy. That's the first point. The second point is that the government needs to protect that space even from big retailers, because if you are going to have Pick and Pay going in the township economy, then it's going to make citizens even poorer, because it will make the people that were predominantly active in that space not able to, to be active economically, because these big retailers are going now to take over that space. You'll recall that when we were growing up, there used to be spazas or general dealers or all forms of economic activities in the township done by various people. Whereas now, the economic activity, if it's not done by foreigners, it is also done by big retailers. And the end result of that, it is the poverty and the economic displacement of citizens. So that is why we are saying as a party that the government needs to make sure that whoever that is trading in the economy, in the township economy, must be compliant with the respective laws of our country, because the laws are very clear. If you are coming from another country wanting to trade, firstly, you need to be legal in the country. You need to have a business visa. You need to invest 5 million to trade. You need to employ 80% of your staff to be South African. Your business needs to be registered for tax. So that is what the government needs to ensure. But predominantly, we want, as the ATM, that the native citizens of this country be the dominant players of all economic activities, whether it's in the townships, it's in the retail sector, it is in the sector, but all economic activities must be dominated by citizens.
Our young people went to school. They're sitting at home with degrees and diplomas, with qualifications. You have young people whereby they've got more than 10 years without jobs. And you've got people coming from China, coming from Japan, coming from Thailand. Most of our power stations, most of those artisans there, they are coming from Taiwan, Thailand, all of these Asian countries. Whereas we've got young people in our country without jobs. We as the ATM, we're not going to accept that nonsense. We're not going to allow that to go any further. We are going to push the government to put the interests of South Africans first. Even if, we take the million jobs that are done by non-South Africans, it means the unemployment will decrease
it means there's going to be more money that will be available for South African families to use to actually nurture their own homes. That is why we're saying our labor laws must be implemented, and all of these companies that want to abuse non-South African citizens, they must be given the heftiest fines as possible. And we're saying to the government that you cannot treat South Africans the manner in which you've been treating South Africans for the past 26 years. It cannot be that you told our young people they need to go to school, and indeed they went to school, they passed with flying colors. Now they are doctors, they've got masters, they've got honors degrees, but you refuse to give them jobs. You give jobs to people who are coming from the far parts of the world, whereas we've got citizens in our country who desperately need those jobs. So we're saying without any fear or without any compromise, we want South Africans to dominate the employment, the labor diversity in our country. We want South Africans to be employed in South Africa, and this is a practice all over the world, that you cannot go to a country and do a work that could be done by the citizens. So that must be the case even here in South Africa. Thank you.